Life, for most people, moves in an unremarkable rhythm, a constant flow of work, family, and the pursuit of small joys. You wake up, you work hard, you face challenges, and you celebrate victories, both big and small. But every now and then, the universe shakes things up in ways you least expect, and everything you thought you knew about your life, your family, and your future is turned upside down. This is a story about one such moment, when a family found themselves thrust into a nightmare that they could neither control nor fully understand. It's a story of innocence, confusion, and the sheer force of love and determination that fuels a family's fight for the truth. It was August 30th, a regular Wednesday, or at least it started that way. I was at home with my family when my father's voice came through on the phone. "Everything's fine," he told us calmly, almost reassuringly, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. But as we later discovered, everything was far from fine. My father had been taken by the CID Criminal Investigation Department, and the call we received was the first and only communication we had from him for a while. At that moment, I couldn't fathom what had happened. My father, a hard-working man who had spent his entire life providing for us, had been taken into custody for reasons we couldn't even begin to comprehend. The first shock was just the news itself. The CID had come for him. That alone was terrifying enough. But the phone call, which came just hours after his arrest, made it sound like nothing was wrong, like he had just been detained for a short time and would be back with us soon. Little did we know, that phone call would be the first of many unanswered questions and the start of a long, painful journey that would turn our lives upside down. As days passed, uncertainty lingered in the air. My father, typically so vocal and present in our lives, had become a mere voice on the other end of the phone. The second call came on September 6th. This time, his tone had changed. There was an urgency, a clear sense of dread in his words. "You need to look for a cheaper flat," he told us. The worry in his voice was palpable. "I'm in big trouble." What did he mean? Was it money trouble? Was he facing charges? We had no answers, and the only certainty was the fear that gripped our hearts with every passing day. My father explained that his situation was serious, that it wasn't a simple misunderstanding. But it wasn't until later that we learned the full extent of the charges against him. The CID had accused him of money transfers totaling 1 million dirhams. These transfers, they claimed, had been occurring since 2017, with money moving in and out of his account in a way that raised suspicion. The thought of my father being involved in anything illicit was incomprehensible. He wasn't a criminal. He was the kind of man who would work long hours just to make sure his family was cared for. He had always been a provider, a man of integrity. But the CID didn't see it that way. They had their own story, one that painted my father as someone engaged in criminal activity. And now, we were left to pick up the pieces of this shattered reality. We immediately started searching for a lawyer, hoping that someone could help us navigate the legal maze we had found ourselves in. But the reality was grim. Even with the best lawyer in the UAE, we feared that the outcome wouldn't be in our favor. No matter how hard we tried to stay hopeful, doubts began to creep in. Would he ever be able to live a normal life again? Would he ever be allowed to return to work after everything that had happened? What would this do to him emotionally, physically, and financially? The thought of the damage this had done to his reputation and to our family weighed heavily on our hearts. As we scoured for legal help, we couldn't help but wonder if the truth would even matter. What if the charges were fabricated or exaggerated? Would the truth matter in the end if the authorities had already decided who my father was in their eyes? These questions haunted us constantly. But it wasn't just the legal ramifications that scared us. The emotional toll of it all was something we were all struggling to cope with. The helplessness, the fear, the constant uncertainty, it all felt overwhelming. As the days turned into weeks, we tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Life continued around us. People went to work, kids went to school, but we were trapped in this limbo, unsure of what the next day would bring. I remember the day I received a message from a friend online, someone who had been following the updates on my father's case. They were questioning my father's innocence, suggesting that he was likely involved in a crime, stealing money, and that we should just accept the reality of it. These words hit me like a ton of bricks. How could anyone so quickly judge my father, a man who had worked 2 jobs for over 30 years, tirelessly and without complaint? From 1990 to 2022, he worked 15-hour days just to provide for us. How could someone who worked that hard for so long possibly be a criminal? Yet here we were, defending his honor against strangers who knew nothing about him. I understood the temptation of the easy narrative, the assumption that someone who ends up in trouble must have done something wrong. But my father's life story didn't fit that narrative. He wasn't perfect, but he had never taken shortcuts or hurt anyone. For decades, he had sacrificed everything for his family. The comments from strangers continued to flood in. Some people, justifying their opinions, began labeling my father based on a few vague allegations. They made sweeping assumptions about his character, despite not knowing him at all. For me, that was the hardest part. It wasn't just about defending him against the legal system. It was also about defending his name, his character, his life. To those people who thought this was all a joke, I wanted to scream. Just imagine if it were you. Imagine if your loved one was locked away, accused of something you knew they didn't do, and you had no idea what was happening to them, or when they'd come back. The emotional weight of it all was crippling. The stress was immense, the pressure to prove my father's innocence mounting with every passing day. In the midst of all the chaos, we started to rebuild. We found the best lawyers we could afford, but every meeting was filled with doubt. Could they really help us? Could they really clear his name in such a complex and fraught case? We clung to hope, but it wasn't easy. Even if my father were released tomorrow, what would his life look like? Could he ever return to his job? Would his career be ruined by these accusations? And beyond that, would any of us ever be able to recover from this traumatic experience? The scars ran deep. Despite all this, I refused to give up on him. I refused to believe that the system would fail us so completely that it would leave us without a voice, without a way to prove the truth. There had to be a way forward. As time has passed, the fog hasn't completely lifted. We still don't know the full story behind why my father was accused. We don't know how long this fight will take, or what the future holds. But we know this. My father is innocent. We are a family, and we will not let this injustice define us. To those who have supported us through this journey, offering kind words and practical advice, thank you. Your support has made a world of difference in a time when it felt like everything was falling apart. To those who have cast judgment without knowing the facts, I ask you to reconsider. It's too easy to make assumptions about someone based on what you hear. But the truth is often far more complicated than it appears at first glance. We still don't know what the future holds, but we will fight for my father's justice, for our family's peace of mind, and for the truth to be heard. This isn't just a case. It's a battle for integrity, for honor, and for the chance to live a normal life again. This is a story of resilience, of fighting against the odds, and of a family that refuses to back down in the face of adversity. The journey isn't over yet, but we will keep pushing forward, one step at a time. And no matter what happens, we will not stop believing in my father's innocence. Write description of this story for YouTube video.